Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of The Package Tourist, hosted by yours truly, the Package Tourist and the magical mystery tour called life, Matthew DiBiase. Tonight, we have a special guest, my dear friend, pro football historian and author Terence T.J. Troup. TJ is one of the foremost historians of professional football. He has written numerous articles for American Football Coaches Monthly and was the football coordinator consultant for the 2008 George Clooney film Leatherheads and also the 2021 film 12 Mighty Orphans. He wrote his first book in 2009 titled This Day in Football. In 2014, he wrote The Birth of Football's Modern 4-3 Defense, and last year, Coach Troup released 1961, a sensational season where he examined the offenses, defenses, kicking team stats in significant games for all 14 NFL teams and the Houston Oilers and San Diego Chargers in the AFL. But tonight, we will be discussing the exploration and analysis of defensive fumble recoveries in the annals of NFL statistics. Coach, welcome back to the show. It's always a great honor to have you here. And I'd like to start off by asking you, Coach, what led you to tackle the topic of defensive fumble recoveries from 1970 up to the present time?
Well, good evening, Matthew. It's always a pleasure being on your show. When I wrote to Steve Sable in 1986, I sent him some detailed stats on interception returns and specifically interceptions returned for touchdowns. Well, that led me to do the in-depth research on every interception that I possibly could from 1940 to the present. So I know what the percentages are. So when we're watching a game and we hear an announcer say or a coach say, we must win the battle of the turnovers, I thought, well, this is only half of the turnovers. I've done the interceptions. How about when we recover an opponent fumble? So that's where I'm at. I'm just kind of following through all these years later to finish up and see what the difference is in the percentage of interceptions to fumble recoveries in victory.
Coach, why is it the detailed stats on defensive fumble recoveries were never really kept? Do you have any ideas or theories as to why?
Well, I've got a few theories. Part of it, I'm sure most fans have never seen the old NFL score sheets, and when you look at them, it starts out with first the team stats, and then it goes through the offensive stats, and it has the interceptions and the kick returns. And then at the very bottom, the last category is opponent fumbles. And in doing this research, it's amazing how many errors have been made in box scores on fumble recoveries.
Wow. When you were doing your research, what insights and surprises can you share with our audience about defensive fumble recoveries from 1970 up to the present time?
Well, the reason I chose 1970 is I thought I had already done the NFL from 45 through 69, and then, of course, the AFL from 60 to 69, which was a real challenge, but doable. But I thought, okay, we've had the merger. 1970, we got Monday Night Football. NFL has really become popular. So why not do all 26 teams for this last 55 years? So in doing so, I think what really jumped out at me is the teams that you would expect to have their share of opponent fumble recoveries did and had the highest winning percentage. And there are always the names of men that we know, the really fine defensive players, and then there are the backup defensive tackles that might recover one in a career. But what really surprised me was how many players were backups on either offense or defense and were involved in the kicking game, and how many opponent fumble recoveries they had.
Okay. Now, which NFL teams from 70 to the present time had 20 or more defensive fumble recoveries in a season? Is that like a magic mark, a very rare thing to achieve, 20 plus in a season for a team?
Well, no, there's many that have had 20.
Okay.
What I did is I wanted to list the teams that had 20 or more in victory.
Ooh, okay.
there since 1945, so 80 years of research, there have been 17 teams.
Ooh. And
there were 7 from 1945 through 1969.
Mm-hmm.
The 48 Cardinals are defending champions. They're the first one on the list. They had 22. But where it really stood out was the Giants and the Browns. They both had powerhouse teams in 1950.
Yeah.
And the Giants recovered 22 in victory, and the Browns 20 in victory. And it's the only time that 2 teams with that had done that played in the playoffs.
Wow. And this is a 12-game season, too, so that's even more extraordinary when you think about it in a 12-game season.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the next year, 1951, everybody always wants to talk, all of these historians want to talk about the Browns offense. Okay, I get it. Otto Graham was terrific, and, they move the ball and they score. But how about in 1951, the Browns recovered 29 opponent fumbles in 12 games, 26 in victory.
Wow. Jeez. Yeah, I mean, they had some great defensemen. You had Len Ford, one of the finest defensive ends of his era there. They had, Marion Motley playing both ways, fantastic linebacker. I mean, they do underestimate the Browns' defense in many ways.
Absolutely. And when you study the film, you see them. They pursue. They were, I don't want to say they were the hardest hitting team, but they sure have their share of knocking the ball loose, and they're always in position. And you must be to recover that many.
Yeah.
Then after that group of 7, then we have 10 in the last 55 years.
Ooh.
And I'm going to name them all right in order.
Okay.
Because this will give the listener a chance, because they're going to think back on who played for these teams.
Yeah.
We have and how good their records were. We have the 71 Cowboys.
Ooh.
The 72 Dolphins. The 73 Cowboys. The 76 Washington Redskins. Then we jump ahead to the one that I'm going to just take a brief moment to flesh out, because this is a record that's never going to be broken. The 1983 Redskins set the record for points scored in a season. Joe Gibbs is a magnificent coach. They're well coached. They've got talent. They've got this great offense. They recovered 27 opponent fumbles in the season, all in victory.
Wow. Jeez.
I mean, that's never going to be broken.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
Then we have the 84 Broncos. We have the 93 Buffalo Bills, the 94 Chiefs. Then here's a surprising one that most teams won't think about. And they did go to the Super Bowl, the 1998 Atlanta Falcons. And the last one, and again, teams the ball is not, we don't have that many opponent fumble recoveries anymore. So a team getting 20 in victory, I just don't think it's going to happen. So the last team to do it, the 2000 Ravens, recovered 26 and had 23 in victory.
Wow. Is forcing and recovering fumbles an art form that can be taught to football players, Coach? Yes or no?
Yes, it can be, but there's times, I mean, I know when I played, there's times you're just trying to tackle the guy with the ball.
Yeah.
But other times, when you're the second man on arrival, the receiver or the runner is already being grabbed, or the quarterback is being grabbed in the pocket, and the second guy there sees that ball, and he crashes into the man with the ball, or tries to punch it out, or strip it down. In fact, I've heard coaches now talk about Peanut Tillman of the Bears, who was amazing at knocking the ball loose, and they call it the peanut punch. Okay. So it can be taught, and but how, you know what I mean? How is it possible in a game? There's times you're just trying to get the man down.
Yeah.
But other times, oh yeah.
But you were mentioning those great teams. You know, you talk about Tom Landry's Cowboys. George Allen, God rest his soul, in '76. Don Shula's perfect team in '72. I mean, you'd say they were among the great coaches, along with Paul Brown. You had Steve Owens, teaching the umbrella defense with those 50 Giants there. Those are great defensive coaches.
Absolutely. And you can preach it, you can teach it, but obviously you're going to have the players that are physical enough and can pursue well enough to knock the ball loose, but it almost becomes a mindset.
Okay. Now, Coach, in your very brilliant article, and you showed it to me in Football Journal, which is based, you can look it up online, ladies and gentlemen, at Football Journal. You talk about the double takeaway, which is a fumble and an interception. Coach, how rare a feat is the double takeaway?
It's going to happen every year, and we still have it now. It just sometimes it'll be 7 times in an entire season. Another year it might be 11. Another year it might be 15. And there's many, many players who did it once or maybe twice. So that, of course, led me to, all right, who has the most? Now, the man who has the most, and he was a fine player, but he's not a name that comes to mind right away. James Hasty was a fine corner for the Jets and the Chiefs. He had 9 double takeaways. But tied for second at 8 are 2 of my personal favorites of all time and are amazing in their ability to always be around the ball. First is Rod Woodson, who was always near the ball and recovered his share of fumbles, including 3 in one game. And, of course, we know how prolific he was at intercepting a pass.
Yeah.
He did it 8 times. But my favorite player of all time is Richard Marvin Butkus, or as I usually refer to him, Dickie Boy. And when Dickie Boy was on the prowl, you better take care of the football.
Yeah.
And he was also, for a big man who was not considered fast, he was so instinctive in his pass drops, and he had excellent hands. 8 times in 9 years. As a linebacker, Dick Butkus did the double takeaway.
I remember reading as a kid, one thing opposing coaches always said is that Butkus had that amazing sixth sense, knowing exactly where the ball was. It just can't be taught. He had it. It was a natural talent of his. Do you concur, Coach?
Absolutely. I'll go very briefly. As a high school linebacker, I was well coached and could pursue and do many of the aspects of playing the linebacker position. But I'm be the first to tell you, I was not instinctive. And I had a teammate, he always seemed to know where the ball was. And I asked him about it. We would be in the film room, and he would say, I just know. And when you watch Butkus on film, he just knew. I mean, I can't say he's the most instinctive, but boy, oh boy, he's in that small fraternity of men that knew where the ball was and got there, usually in a very angry and violent mood.
Very angry and all that. I mean, now in that same article, Coach, you mentioned Burt Reckeshar. Please tell our listeners about him. Why did you cite him in that article, Coach, in Football Journal? He
was a Steve Sable favorite. And he led me to, and he had done a segment on him. He had been a Cleveland Brown and got plenty of playing time with the Browns. But his personality was not a natural fit with Paul Brown. And they made that 15 men involved in one trade. So he became a Baltimore Colt. So in 1953, the Colts, this is not the old AAFC Colts, this is the brand new Baltimore Colts. First game at home. And Reckeshar, playing right safety, intercepts 3, including one that basically is the winning score as he returns an interception for a touchdown. But in doing my research, he also recovered a bare fumble, so he has 4 takeaways. How many players in history recorded 4 takeaways in their first game for a brand new team?
Wow. Amazing.
And then, Yes, and during that game, he also kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
And the fun part was, it was 56 yards and was a new record.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good day's work.
Yeah. I mean, it was the record until Tom Dempsey broke it, which is another amazing aspect for Burt Rekkachar. Yeah.
Absolutely. And plus, with his personality and the stories told about him in NFL film, so that's why I thought I'd plug him in.
Okay. Now, also in that article, you mentioned Preston Riley. Please tell our audience about him.
Well, again, because of the amount of men on the squad, you have players that want to stay employed, and they may be the backup at whatever position. Let's say it's linebacker or running back, but they are going to be involved in the kicking game, and we're starting with the merger in 70. The kicking game is even taking on more emphasis.
Yeah.
I mean, you had mentioned George Allen earlier, but I think many of the teams are really doing this.
Yeah.
Preston Riley actually started 4 games in 1970 and 8 games in 1972 at wide receiver for the 49ers. But believe me, he was not a focal point of the offense, and he didn't catch that many passes. But in running down the field on the kickoff team and the punt team, he recovered 5 opponent fumbles over 21 games. I mean, Steve Tasker was terrific.
Yeah.
But Steve Tasker never even came close to that.
Jeez. Wow. Yeah. I remember Preston Riley. Here's an ironic thing. In that 1972, was it and it was it was not the conference final, it was the division final, when Dallas came back from a 28-16 deficit and Tony Fritsch did an onside kick. I remember watching that as a kid. The 49er who fielded the ball and fumbled it was Preston Riley.
Exactly.
I remember that as a kid. Yeah, that's the first time I ever saw a successful onside kick in my life. Yeah, and all of that. Okay. Coach, getting back to your article, you mentioned another rare defensive feat. A defensive fumble recovery and a sack. Has any player ever achieved that feat based on your research?
Oh, yeah, many times.
Okay.
I'm not sure how close and now let me underline we are going to come to completing this, because there is no doubt I am going to get help from 2 famous and fantastic historians and researchers in Nick Webster and John Turney.
Yes.
And with their sack stats and my own sack stats, and with the fumble recoveries, we want to see who had the most historically, which I'm 100% sure. Jason Taylor. 18 times he had a sack and an opponent fumble recovery in the same game.
Wow. Gee.
So going back to when they first started keeping the sack stats and the opponent fumble recovery stats, I want to see who the early leaders were. I have a pretty good idea, but until I have more in-depth information, I'd rather not say the names.
Okay.
But it's kind of fun. And when I would do film study, again, you would see, let's say that, Matthew, you're coming from one side and I'm coming from the other. And you hit the quarterback first and you dislodge the ball. And I go, and I'm coming from the other side, and I go and I grab to get the fumble recovery, but it bounces off my shoulder.
Yeah.
So you get the sack, and then the ball rolls free, and then you fall on the ball.
Yeah.
So there are times where the man who got the sack actually also got the fumble recovery.
Okay. In fact, when you finalize that research and you finally have it all locked and cocked, we need to do this again so you can update us with your new information. Okay, Coach?
I would love to. Okay. I would love to. Like I say, both Turney and Webster have done a magnificent job, and it just tells you about the men who were prolific at pursuit, and of course, because the game is so involved with the passing game, knocking the ball loose from the quarterback now, I mean, it's vital.
Okay. Now, Coach, in that same article, you mentioned an even rarer feat, a defensive fumble recovery a sack, and an interception in one game. Based on your research, has any NFL player or players ever achieved that specific feat?
It's a very, very small fraternity. I've really worked at it. We can, again, having Turney and Webster sack stats, we can kind of do some from the 50s and 60s. I thought I wanted to come up with a catchy name, paying reference to my departed friend Steve Sable, who always had the catchy way of calling things. So first I wanted to call it the whole enchilada, but I thought, nah, that doesn't fit. So I thought, well, let's use a little hockey in here. So we'll call it the hat trick stat. And there are a handful of men. Larry Grantham did it late in his career for the Jets.
Yeah.
But the one who really stood out, when Droulis is coaching the Cardinals defense in the early 60s, he is teaching the safety blitz. And his prize pupil is supposed to be Jerry Norton, and Jerry Norton does blitz. But this wiry kid from Idaho is even better. So in the last game of the season against the Steelers, Larry Wilson gets a sack, a fumble recovery, and an interception.
Coach, how fabulous was Larry Wilson as a safety?
Well, when you're 74 years old, like I am, and you're 9 years old in 1960, and then you're watching games in the 60s, basically, I grew up watching them.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored, though it was a very short discussion. I had a chance to meet him when I visited the Cardinals. He was very gracious, very humble.
Yeah.
And I shared a couple things with him, and, you know, the shared laughter, and, of course, talking about how the game is played and how he played. Like I said, I cannot say enough good things about him.
Yeah.
He is one of those men who maximize the traits the Lord gave him.
Yes.
He was sure not the biggest or fastest, but I'm not sure anybody played any harder than he ever did. And he was one of those men who was instinctive and was always around the ball.
Yeah. Question. I'm kind of curious. Based on your research, has anyone ever researched which safety ever achieved the most sacks? Would it be Larry Wilson? You know, since he loves safety blitzing, is he has the most sacks among a safety, you know, of a quarterback?
No, he does not hold it. I should know that right off the top. It is Turney and Webster do know who has that.
Yeah,
there are some guys that have gotten into the 20s in sacks.
Yeah.
And every once in a while in a season, I don't know what Larry's best year was. We could try and look that up. Part of the issue is, of course, you hope to have every game book, and you hope to have the game books accurate.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll very briefly go to this.
Yeah.
I'm watching a highlight film from the 1967 Bears. And here comes Richie Pettibone flying from left safety into the backfield and nails the Lion quarterback, and he fumbles.
Yeah.
And when you read the game book, it says Ed Obradovich, number 87.
Ouch.
So that is part of the issue of why any type of research is always a challenge, because Elias has it wrong, the Sporting News has it wrong, the NFL Network has it wrong, and part of it is because they went by what some drunken scorekeeper wrote down rather than going back over the film.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, also, not just for a season, but also career-wise, you know, which career, you know, defensive corner, you know, either a corner or a safety ever had the most sacks? That would be an interesting question there, career-wise, too. But getting back to it, your article, you know, when I was reading your article, something had hit me. Coach, has anyone ever achieved, I call the defensive grand slam, a sack, a defensive fumble recovery, an interception? Oh, wait a minute, an interception. Wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. That can't be a grand slam.
Yeah, we've already
a safety and a safety and a safety and a safety in a single game.
Oh boy, now that one I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that's happened.
But that would be the Grand Slam. Yeah, think about it.
Boy, that would be the Grand Slam.
I wonder if anyone's ever come close when you think about it. I mean, you had that one trifecta, that one guy, and all that. Anyone else getting a trifecta out of a 4?
Right. Well, there has always been a discrepancy about there were times quarterbacks were tackled for a safety, and it was not always recorded as a sack.
Ouch. Okay.
So, again, scorekeeping has improved dramatically from 1945 to where we are today.
Okay. Coach, when it comes to football statistical research, is there a stat that needs to be explored and examined thoroughly which hasn't been touched yet? Is there an undiscovered country in NFL statistics that still needs to be examined, to get new insights into the game? Anything come to mind, Coach?
Well, for me right now, I'm going to stick with the opponent fumble because I've still got, even though I've got all the raw numbers, it's the analysis of it. So there's always going to be something. And we can even break it down to having the lead, what part of the field we're on. So there's always something that can be explored in research.
Okay.
There are times when I'll be online and I'll see somebody post an aspect of a great player, and there was one today, and though this is different than our topic, I'm briefly going to go there. It shows a picture of Jim Brown in 1961 against the Eagles.
Yeah.
And he tied his record in that game.
Yeah.
I believe he had 38 carries for 237 yards.
Yep.
I mean, just amazing game.
Yeah.
To carry the ball that many times, gain that many yards, his longest run in the game was 19 yards.
Yep.
So you can imagine how many 8 and 7 and 10-yard runs he must have had in that game. I mean, there's no 50s or 70-yard runs in here.
Right.
So he just kept pounding it out. So that's also fun to do. When you see a man who really put up an amazing amount of numbers. I've done it with receiving. I've done it in the running game. You can do it for quarterbacks. There's so many different areas where we can look back on what was accomplished then and tie it to what is being done now. But the opponent fumble is the area that, like I say, no one ever announces what the percentage is.
Yeah.
And I have that percentage, and of course, I'm not going to say it in our discussion because I'm hoping there'll be a website that would want this.
Good.
And of course, if they contact me, you know what I mean, we'll negotiate.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you anticipate a future book project based on this present research, Coach?
No. Writing after the debacle, and that's with a capital D, by the way, Matthew, the debacle of my last book and being treated so poorly by the publishing company.
Ouch.
Writing a book now, unless you're somebody like Stephen King or Grisham, it's just how much time and effort do you put in for how little pay? And I know how hard I worked on it. I know how good the book is, and I know how little I have to show for it monetarily.
Yeah.
Now, there's more to life than just money.
Yeah.
There are a number of seasons in NFL history that can be researched and I think would be fascinating to the fan and to the reader.
Yep.
The one that stands out to me the most right now is 1977.
Okay. Okay. Why that year? If you don't mind me asking, why that year?
No. I'm glad you did.
Okay. Why that year? What about it? Okay. Why?
Scoring is down dramatically.
Ooh.
Defensive football that year, you have offenses that are literally, and the fan can look it up, are grinding to a halt. At one point in 77, it looks like a three-way race between Washington, Atlanta, and Chicago for the wild card, and it's going to be who can win the most games 10-3. For example, when Sir Walter has his incredible game against Minnesota, look at the final score of the game when they beat them. I mean, the man gained 275 yards rushing, and the Bears won, what, 10-7?
Jeez. Yeah.
So something had to be done in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, Pete Rozelle was a brilliant man and was a very good listener. And the powers that be sat down. I'm sure he talked to coaches. So what do we have in 1978? We have two dramatic rule changes. Where now the pass blocking rules change, and being able to, I'll say, jam, mug, physically violate a receiver downfield is going to be changed to doing it within the first 5 yards. So let's go back and look at the last year before they made those two dramatic rule changes.
Yeah.
So 1977 plus, you add in there, you had, I believe, the best Dallas Cowboy team of all time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Coach, it's a great honor and privilege to have you on the show here, and I can't wait to have you again. In fact, at the end of the year, we got to talk about the anniversary, the 65 Packers and the 65 Buffalo Bills. Okay, Coach?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, that was one of those seasons where you have a defending champion playing a very powerful opponent in the championship game. So taking us to how Green Bay won and how Buffalo won will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that 65 NFL championship game, I think it's one of the most underrated NFL title games, and I think in NFL history, in my view. It should have been examined far more thoroughly when you examine it, and we're going to have enormous amount of fun, 5 months from now when we do it. Okay, Coach?
Absolutely, and I totally agree with that. That Browns-Packers game was almost like the end of an era because the next year is the Super Bowl.
Yes. I think it's not almost. It truly was a changing of the guard, literally an end of an era. And there's enormous amount of metaphor there, symbolism there in that game, the participants there. So much meaning there. And we're going to explore that 5 months from now. We're really going to explore that, and we're going to have a lot of fun, Coach.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. You take care, Coach, okay?
Thank you, Matthew.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for my next show where I'll be interviewing author James Johnson. Thank you and good night.